This is Roberto Martinez, and you're listening to Follow Tonians podcast. Enjoy.
This is Albert Bosch from Catalonia, and you're listening to the Follow Tonians. Same club, different accents.
This is Hank Bramblett from Missionary Ridge, Tennessee. You're listening to the Follow Tonians. Same club, different accents.
This is Maria Chamberlain from Galway, Ireland, and you're listening to the Follow-Tonians, same club, different accents.
Hey, this is Mike McKenna from Boston, Massachusetts, and you're listening to Follow-Tonians, same club, different accents.
This is Pat O'Mahony from Dublin in Ireland, and you're listening to the Follow-Tonians, same club, different accents.
This is Jack Dowden from London, England, and you're listening to the Follow-Tonians. Same club, different accents.
Follow-Tonians, hosted by Eric Howell and Ped McPartland.
All right, everybody, welcome to a special end-of-the-year edition wrap-up show from the Follow-Tonians. Eric here in Lawrence, Kansas. Ped in Old Swan, Liverpool. Paddy Howland out in somewhere else in Liverpool. And James Hollis in Charleston, South Carolina. How's it going, everybody?
Hello, Eric.
Paddy?
Hey, Eric. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Paddy is there. All right, great. Excellent. Excellent. So we're gonna go through a couple of key moments in the season, some big high-level topics, and just kind of go through the year that was Roberto Martinez's freshman campaign at Everton. And so let's start off with James here. Kind of what was your expectations for the season whenever we hired Martinez, and what were you thinking Everton was going to do?
Well, it was kind of strange because obviously, with him getting relegated that last season, I wasn't excited about it. He really won me over in that first interview, to be honest. Because I remember I think I was in China at this point, and I was watching what happened with, David Moyes leaving and feeling really sad about that. And then that first interview, the press conference, I started feeling hopeful. And then everything was it felt so much different from the very beginning in the summer. I was probably not fully convinced. Obviously, the first two draws were debilitating, and I hate draws, probably because we've had like 30 of them in the past 3 years. But once you saw us win the Chelsea game, and then the way that we won and refused to give up in the West Ham game immediately after that, I feel like you saw that he was developing, and you saw what we could be as a team, and I think he had convinced me by that point, and I certainly have believed in him ever since.
Paddy, what was your expectations when we hired Martinez?
When we first hired him, I thought it was the easy option for Bill Kenwright, to be honest with you. Clearly, he just won the FA Cup, so he had something in his CV. But the big concern was that he took Wigan down that season as well. I knew he has a good squad. I think David Moyes built a good squad, and what Roberto Martinez inherited was a strong squad, I think, to compete in the upper reaches of the Premier League, which is something Martinez has never done before. But personally, I thought at the start of the season with some of the players that he bought, we'd have done well to finish sort of mid-table this year. I think a season of consolidation and getting used to a new style of play. So I was prepared to give the guy some time, but some time to turn it around as well and put his own specific thumbprint onto the team. So I think the first couple of games, to me, it didn't come as a major surprise that we struggled, I think, in terms of trying to create chances and trying to convert them chances. So I think the first 3 games were mainly where I thought we would be really sort of start of the season, and I thought overall over the year we'd probably finish around about mid-table.
Ped?
Well, I think we're all well aware when Roberto Martinez was coming in, or there was certainly rumours of him coming in. There was underwhelmed, I think would be the word for most Evertonians, or certainly a lot of Evertonians, simply because it's hard to gauge what a manager does at another club when you're looking from the outside in. You can't always tell how he fits in, how he fits other people in, because you're so fixated on your club that sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. And I think that's something we've all learned over the last year about David Moyes. Never mind Roberto Martinez, you can't see past sometimes who is your own manager. So sometimes seeing the merits of someone else's manager when the results are not there is really hard. But when he was appointed, I remember the day he was appointed, I was on a national radio station and they asked me, and I said the first thing I said was, Bill Kenwright's thrown him under a bus there, basically by saying, he said he'll get his Champions League. I really thought that was the worst thing anyone could ever have said. But in the end, it turned out to be a masterstroke because it was almost like Bill Kenwright taking the pressure off him by him saying it and not actually Roberto Martinez coming out in the press conference and saying it. And I think that raised expectations, which, without sort of us knowing, had been chipped away at for the last few years. In fact, some of us just didn't even have any expectations after we'd had Walter Smith and those years before, and then going from Bill Kenwright. The expectation was to finish 6th or 7th and never really worry too much about going higher than that. So when this guy comes in and says, I'm going to get you Champions League, you suddenly think, no, actually, you're going to get us relegated by trying to get us Champions League. Because that's what we were expecting from Wigan. But, as James and Paddy have just said there, how he walked in and just sort of embraced everything about Everton, suddenly you just think, actually, I feel okay. It was like getting a nice big hug of a big fat guy. That's what it felt like. It was very comforting. Like a warm bowl of soup. From that point on, I think we all felt we were all prepared to give this guy our time and our money, and we were all going to, give him as much as he needed to do the job.
Yeah, it was very, concerning for me. The fact Wigan had gotten relegated, but bounced that with winning the FA Cup. Everybody will go back and listen to the summer show that we did, and it was Victor Pereira was the name on everybody's mouth.
Isn't he somewhere in the middle?
But
yeah, he's in a cell. Ran.
He showed someone the bottom of his foot, I think, and got thrown into jail. And but that's the pundit view of it. It's the outside looking in. It's what we think is best, and obviously we don't know what we're talking about. But because after the conference where we did hire Martinez, as Ed said, everything seemed like it was going to be at least okay. But then he signs a few players who happen to all play for Wigan. And we get Kone, we get Alcaraz, we get Robles, and then we all of a sudden like Wigan Southwest. and it's very it's another level for concern. It's like, okay, well, we're not Wigan. We have expectations, but then deadline day comes around, and I just wanted to get Paddy's reaction first to what happened at deadline day in the fall, and what he thought of the dealings there.
Well, it was quite an amazing day all round, really, wasn't it? And I think a seminal point in our entire season. I remember getting to around about 6 o'clock at night, starting to get really nervous. So we'd had a work permit application turned down for some guy from Porto who City tried to buy in January. That seemed to come from left field. So, and at the time, I think most of us thought it was going to be a bit of a smokescreen. And then it got to 7 o'clock, and the rumours started gathering pace that Fellaini was about to ask for the transfer. Still no sign of anyone coming in. Gareth Barry was somewhere on the M62, had been since about 9 o'clock that morning. We get to 8 o'clock at night, and then the rumours start to gather about Romelu Lukaku potentially joining us. We get to 9 o'clock at night, and Lukaku was joining West Brom, according to Sky Sports News. There was no sign of Gareth Barry on that M62, only 30 miles away from Liverpool, so God knows where he was. Fellaini was on his way to United, we thought, and Dave Whelan turned around and said Everton put a derisory offer in for James McCarthy, and he wasn't going to trade with us. So between 9 o'clock and 9:30, I think I remember being on Twitter and on Facebook and every form of social media, it was going into meltdown with a lot of Evertonians panicking. wondering what was going on. We get to 9:30 at night, and I know you guys are about to set up to do your end of transfer window special. Very much going to be a sort of very grave hour or so, and then all of a sudden, in that hour between 10 o'clock and 11, we sold Fellaini, signed Gareth Barry, signed James McCarthy, and Romelu Lukaku hadn't actually been in talks with West Brom, but was in the hotel room with Kevin Morales telling him he was joining us. So an absolutely surreal hour and a half or so. But in terms of entertainment, absolutely fantastic. And to cap it all off, we've got £6 million for Victor Anichebe as well. Absolutely amazing and unbelievable how our whole season seemed to transform in an hour and a half.
Ped, where's the toffee copter? Where, how many miles did the toffee copter get put on that day?
The toffee copter was non-stop for those couple of hours. But as Paddy just mentioned there, we were sitting down to that show, and the dealings that have been done in the summer, obviously, like Kone coming in and Alcaraz and Robles and Deulofeu, and yes, they were good squad members, but there was no sort of eye-catching player being brought in, and we all felt like Fellaini was obviously going to go, and he didn't really fit in with what Roberto Martinez wanted to do, and just in that hour and a half, everything just transformed. And we come off the back of 3 draws, and some people were starting to question Roberto Martinez already, unbelievably. The fact that we just couldn't seem to finish games off. We'd had loads of chances, but we just lacked the cutting edge. And with that hour and a half transformed things. And we were doing the live show, and it was just amazing the sort of where we came from, that 10 o'clock, and the positivity by the time we got to just after 11 o'clock. It was unbelievable. But when you think about it, we were all sort of really sort of worrying, but it felt like now that it was just an amazing master plan, again done by Roberto Martinez. Gareth Barry seems like it was always done, and it was just almost a question of not announcing it till a certain time. Obviously Lukaku came in late, but it all feels like it was orchestrated to push Manchester United to the very limit to get 27 million for them. It just feels like we were just playing really, really clever or dumb in which way you look at it. And Manchester United fell for it by the looks of it. They were in a worse position, a far worse position. They had to buy someone. Fellaini was the prime candidate. And what Roberto Martinez done by bringing Barry in and McCarthy was he had a plan. He already knew how those two players would fit together in the whole team. And it feels like it was just all really well orchestrated. Lukaku was... he was the icing on the cake, but the cherry on the cake was actually not selling Leighton Baines. And that's what you've got to remember as well. We kept hold of Leighton Baines, and that suddenly transformed us from being a selling club to a club that actually had some kind of power, or felt like it had some kind of power. And to come out of it and to be able to stick your chest out and go, we've just bought these players, and guess what? We kept hold of the best left back in Europe when Manchester United were knocking down the door, and everybody was telling us that he was going to Manchester United. They had been for 2 weeks. Fellaini, we all said we could deal with it. We could deal with him going because he didn't fit in, but Leighton Baines staying, I mean, that was a masterstroke as well. So it was a phenomenal night. It was a phenomenal night for us to be able to broadcast that live and be able to witness the up and downs of not only ourselves but other Evertonians getting in touch with us on social media. It was just fantastic. I just remember that. Obviously, doing the show, it had like Sky Sports on in the background, and then people tweeting us going, he's here, he's there. He's just been said that he's here, he's on his way. Lukaku's going to West Brom. No, he's not. He's not actually there. Because someone actually said they'd seen Lukaku in the car park at West Brom, and he was in Belgium. And this was a Sky Sports reporter, and that sort of proved that those guys don't have a clue what they're doing, or make things up just to keep people interested.
Right.
So it was brilliant to be part of all that, and it was just turning out to be a fantastic day.
James, to build on what Ped said, how key was it to hold on to Leighton Baines?
On the Landon Donovan, I know where you're thinking. Well, I mean, I think it was huge. The strange thing about this season is, if anything, we've seen Leighton Baines, I guess, grow in terms of his stature in the team, but not necessarily in how important he is to our play. Honestly, I think that the key thing about deadline day was we got to see. You always knew that Roberto Martinez was great with the media, but you never knew. We couldn't tell at that point whether or not that translated into anything else. So like he's great at talking, but we really got to see how his charisma could bring a team together. Because if you look at the interviews coming out of that day, you see Lukaku talking about how Roberto Martinez convinced him within like a minute of I should go here. He knows exactly how he wants to develop me, exactly how he wants to use me, and he can relate that to me.
Yeah.
And probably in a couple of different languages. You see the exact same conversation with Gareth Barry. He goes over to Gareth Barry's house. Within 10 minutes, he's convinced him to sign on loan and probably permanently. At least I hope so. We can talk about that later. But obviously yeah, I hope so. Yeah. Obviously, he sat down with Leighton Baines at some point either that day or right before then and told him exactly how he wanted to develop him and how he wanted to use him and why he should stay. And, Leighton Baines bought into it, and obviously the team bought into it. So we're still seeing the effects of that now.
The season started out with 3 draws, and for me the Chelsea match, getting the 3-win, the 1-0 win, the header by James Naismith, definitely is it?
I think his name's Stephen.
Stephen Naismith. Yeah.
Isn't James Naismith the inventor of basketball?
He is. He is. I was thinking James McCarthy. I was thinking James McCarthy. I've got a note down here about McCarthy, but I was thinking James McCarthy and saying Naismith, and they went together. The header by Stephen Naismith, 1-0 victory over Chelsea. Definitely at Goodison, kind of getting a chance to finally see the style of play that Martinez is trying to put into place and actually working. I think has got to be the turning point in the season as far as being able to believe Martinez could bring to Everton was going to work. What do you think, Ped?
I personally, I thought the Chelsea game, we just dug that result out, and I think it showed all the battling characteristics of David Moyes' team. I think, for me, obviously the week after West Ham introducing Lukaku and introducing McCarthy was a big turning point, because what happened at half-time was Jelavic was just pulled off and at half-time because he'd been atrocious. And this fresh new striker was put onto the pitch, and that never been, that hadn't been possible before. Really, it was if Jelavic came off, it was for Naismith, and suddenly and Naismith obviously never really found his feet under Moyes. So having
who did find his feet under Moyes?
No, but having that was a big boost, and I think also in the West Ham game, obviously Leighton Baines scoring those 2 goals was a big, it was a big sort of 2 fingers up to everyone saying, I'm an Everton player and that's all. But I think if you really want to talk about style and substance and what Roberto Martinez has brought to Everton, you only have to look at the 2 games in a week, away at Manchester United and away at Arsenal. To play for 80-odd minutes at Old Trafford against, a really poor Manchester United team, but to be going into the last 10 minutes and your centre-half to be on the edge of the box, creating a chance that your left-back scores. And then in the last minute, Deulofeu, rampaging down the right. Also, you've got that over that mindset of going to a big team and winning, and then you go to Arsenal a few days later and you're 1-0 down again. You've controlled the game, but you're 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go. The media is loving it because it's all about Arsenal going 7 points clear. That's the narrative of that game. Arsenal going 7 points clear, and the next minute you bring on again Deulofeu. He steps up, smashes one in, and it's 1-1, and we've got something out of a game that we normally wouldn't get anything out of, and it was those 2 games for me that really said what Roberto Martinez was all about, in the way he approached games, the way he attacked games, and his mentality towards games. But the other one as well, very quickly, was in the derby when Leighton Baines had to go off injured, and instead of bringing another left back on we've just been used to years seeing another defender come on,
like for like, regardless. Yeah,
he brings Deulofeu on and just says, right, we're going to attack this game now and go for it. And that again showed Roberto Martinez at his best.
James?
What was the question again?
When did you believe in Martinez's system and that it was going to work for Everton?
Well, as I talked about earlier, I think it was probably that West Ham game because we saw like flashes of it even in those first 3 draws, and they were just terrible. But it was a matter of putting it together into a winning combination. Because I remember, if you think about the biggest things that we were worried about with Martinez coming in, we knew he could play a good possession game. The question was whether we could defend, because that was like the sort of foundation of our team under David Moyes was our defense. So it was a matter of like, first we start developing the strategy in those couple of games. Then we showed that we could defend when we're playing Chelsea, and then as he makes the addition of Lukaku into the team in West Ham, we show that we can attack, and we show exactly how we can attack. So I was pretty convinced at that point. Obviously, at that point, we start having to get over some of the problems that we had in the past, particularly going away to big teams. And I was in dreamland for the matches at Old Trafford and the Emirates, because I finally saw, we're not going in there and packing it in and, waiting for them to score a goal that's just going to break our hearts. We're actually going in with a strategy to fight it out and try to win. And I knew that I was fully convinced at that. I was probably fully convinced farther back than that, but that was just a blast. I loved both of those.
And Paddy, what about you?
I think for me, West Ham was great. It was a fantastic away day. But we still had a lot of all sorts of unconvincing performances between then and the sort of end of November. So you've got to remember we were played the likes of Tottenham at home in an awful performance at Goodison that day, and then we played Crystal Palace away. 2 really, really poor matches. So I was still to be convinced really by Martinez. I think for me, similarly to Ped, I think the second half of the Merseyside derby was the start of the run when things started to really sort of bed down, and Martinez seemed to find his feet in charge of that, and the players started playing in the style that he was looking to deliver as well. So we had that second half against Liverpool, backed off them against the 4-0 win against Stoke, which is often overlooked from this season, but we absolutely destroyed Stoke that day. And at the time, I thought Stoke were a really poor side, but look how they finished the season. Their best ever Premiership finish this year. We made them look absolutely abject, and that put us into a fantastic run then against Manchester United, Arsenal, and then we played Fulham at Goodison Park then on the back of that. So that series of games to me really started to show that we were playing in a style of football that I'd not seen for a long time at Goodison Park, and I'm starting to become convinced by what Martinez was trying to achieve. When David Moyes first came in, we had that run of sort of 6 games where we won every game by a solitary goal. But in this run, we were actually winning games of absolute style. Going to Old Trafford and actually win that game so late on, but still seeing your full-backs and your centre-half in their half of the pitch, and I was looking to try and get a second goal. Going to Arsenal, going a goal down, which was really harsh, but still, attacking and getting that equaliser through Delafield. And we could have got a winner as well through Lukaku. Just the style of football totally changed. So that run of games for me really was the sort of starter when I was starting to think, this guy's actually the real deal. The players are bought into what he's got, and the players he's added to the squad are adding the whole new dimension to how Everton could play.
Few setbacks through the season. A lot of injuries. Many times we're looking at the squad, and our injury list is almost as I guess valuable and key as the starting 11. The Darren Gibson's going out early. The Kone's with a knee early. The Pinar's injured quite regularly. Jagielka missed quite a few matches. What were some of these setbacks as far as injuries or performances that we think we learned the most from, James?
Well, the funny thing about the injuries is, we've had injury problems. I know y'all have talked about it on the show a number of times, that David Moyes used to push like a very thin squad really hard. So by the end of the season we'd have injuries, or we'd have injuries from the beginning of the next season because people are trying to recover. I feel like the thing about the team that Martinez created this season is that we had all of those injuries, but we were working from sort of a template of, hey, we have James McCarthy and Gareth Barry in the middle, neither of which missed significant parts of the season. So as long as we had that foundation and that base, you could switch out the other people and it still worked. But yeah, obviously the biggest injury this season that I think probably made our top 4 challenge the hardest was Lukaku going out for 6 weeks, because you got like debilitated, and it was horrible watching the derby at Anfield. And we come out of that for 6 weeks and you don't have a striker. Obviously Stephen Naismith stepped up and did a good job, but it showed the biggest hole in our team is finding another striker that can score consistently when you lose somebody like Lukaku. And I think that's probably what we need to look to fill this summer, sort of always, is Everton, let's be honest.
Paddy?
In terms of the setbacks, I found Fulham a major one in the Capital One Cup. I thought it was a massive missed opportunity for Everton this year, and you saw Sunderland get to the final. I think Martinez learnt a lot that night, that maybe some of the players in his squad maybe weren't as good as he'd hoped he'd be, or rise to the challenge. I think he learnt a lot about the likes of John Heitinger and people like that. We never saw John Heitinger again, really, play for Everton following that game. The Merseyside derby at Anfield was unquestionably a major setback, but I think again Martinez learned a hell of a lot about his players, and the fact the way we bounced back actually after that Merseyside derby defeat. We went into the Aston Villa game the following Saturday, winning at half time, a goal down, but we came back, we fought back fantastically against Villa. And showing a lot of strength of character. So I think Martinez learnt a lot in that game as well. In terms of the injuries, I think the Gibson one was quite a major one. Even though Gareth Barry did and James McCarthy did play most of the season without any injuries or suspensions, the fact that we couldn't rest either of them players during the season, I think caught us out at the end. So if you go back to the Crystal Palace match, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point or another back in April time, that ultimately cost us the Champions League, and we had to leave out James McCarthy that night because we just literally, he'd run out of steam, he'd picked up an injury, he was looking tired, and the manager had to take a call and he had to leave him out. And ultimately, leaving them out for that 70 minutes of that game cost us Champions League football. You do think if we'd had more options in centre midfield and we'd be able to rotate a little bit more, that type of sort of occurrence wouldn't have happened. So I think for the lesson learned for Martinez, obviously we need to get greater strength and depth in midfield. I think that's one of the main things from the summer that we need to try and resolve. But I think overall, I think every time we had a setback during the season, so say Sunderland and Boxing Day, Liverpool at Anfield in January time, Arsenal in the FA Cup, Fulham in the Capital One Cup, we always bounced back. So I think Martinez learned there was a lot of strength, a lot of character in his players. It's one of the main things he always talks about, is that strength of character. And what I think he's done over the course of the season, he's utilised that to develop and grow the team and grow the team ethic, but also in encapsulate his own thoughts and his own views on the team as well. So I think there's a hell of a lot. We've had very, very few setbacks in comparison to a lot of other seasons that we've had, but I think Martinez has used each of them setbacks to his advantage every single time.
What about you, Ped?
I think, we're talking about negatives, but, Roberto Martinez has always had a way of turning negatives into positives. That's just the way the man...
Did we lose Ped right whenever we were going to talk to him? Well, for me, I would agree with Paddy about the Fulham match. I definitely think that was a big opportunity lost. And you there, Ped? Not yet. And the Fulham match, big opportunity lost. Another thing that I was concerned about that we seem to hopefully right the ship on was set-piece defense early on in the season, and definitely in the home derby. It looks as though we just could not get it right whenever it came to set pieces. And the home derby we should have won. To concede that set piece late, I know that there were quite a few times where we're just, I don't know, the foul comes and you just know that it's just not going to go Everton's way. But later on throughout the season, it seems as though that was less and less of a worry. So hopefully that was one thing that we've got worked out within the squad. And I think Oviedo's leg break at Stevenage was probably one of the bigger setbacks for Everton as far as injuries go. His role taking over whenever Leighton was out, his goal against United, just his play, his dynamic. He just kind of gave a little bit different look to things from Pinar in front of Baines, and then filling in for Baines, as I said, whenever he was injured. So I think the injury to Oviedo was a major setback, but it seemed also to be kind of like a rallying point. A lot of the supporters definitely got behind Oviedo. The entire squad kind of felt like they needed to carry on for him. So I guess those would be a couple of my points. Well, I guess we'll get back to Ped.
You could have just waited for me. Eric. We're not doing it live. God damn you. For me, it was the fact that it was Roberto Martinez was always take a negative and make it a positive. So if you look back to the Sunderland game, we lost 1-0, but we were fantastic that second half. And he basically said one goal cost us 3 points, but he said I will not compromise the way I play, because learning to play this style will win us more games than when the odd mistake will do losing, or just throwing endless crosses into the box where a ball hits someone's backside and go in. That's pure luck. He wanted to get away from pure luck. The derby, of course, was a terrible night, but when you think about getting beat 4-0 at Anfield, it never really stuck around that long, even as bad as it was. It was just one of those nights. I think everybody felt that way. We just set up far too open. We had too many injured players, and Roberto Martinez that night learned that maybe going for it 100% maybe isn't always the way to do it when you haven't got the players available. So obviously that was a major disappointment. But I think everything we have every time we've had a setback, this year, we've learned from it one way or another, and every player has learned from it, and he's learned about his players. And as Paddy referred to before, the likes of the Fulham game away was a massive disappointment for me when you think about where it could have took us. But again, if John Heitinger hadn't been so bad that night, would we have seen the emergence of John Stones come out of that? And that's for me where Roberto Martinez is a level above, because he sees that he doesn't go on, he doesn't continue with someone. The likes of Jelovic and Heitinger were just he gives them a chance. They were rubbish, and he got rid of them, and that was it. There was no arguments. He knew exactly who could do a job and who couldn't do a job. Whereas someone like Naismith has ended up proving he could do a job. And that's Roberto Martinez for you. He takes negatives, turns them into positives, and if you're not good enough, he gets rid of you because he knows exactly what he wants.
Let's get into the Champions League talk, because we were in the driver's seat with 6 matches to go, and going into that Crystal Palace match at home, we figure we've got a pretty good shot at getting 4th place. But that loss at Crystal Palace, or against Crystal Palace, just kind of really, I don't know, set the tone for the remaining matches. And we other than the Man United win and then the Hull City win, that was the only joy the rest of the year. Did we ever really have a chance to get into the Champions League? What do you think, Paddy?
Yeah, I think we definitely did have a chance of getting into the Champions League. If you looked at the quality of the performance against Arsenal at the start of April, that for me was probably one of the best Everton performances in the last 20, 30 years or so. So, yeah, the team that actually ended up qualifying and winning the FA Cup, we were absolutely streets ahead of. So, yeah, I think we definitely did have a realistic chance of doing it. I think the problem was we ran out of players, and the games all came thick and fast for us. The Crystal Palace match, timing of it was awful. It wasn't meant to be then anyway. It was due to be in February time, and it's questionable if we'd have won that night as well, given the team that Martinez was going to put out against them with the FA Cup tie with Swansea for the following game. However, I just felt that night he selected the team, I think, with the Manchester United game in his mind. He was obviously looking towards Saturday, or the Sunday, sorry. And I think a lot of Everton fans were that night as well. Everyone was preoccupied with the Manchester United game. And I get the feeling Martinez might have just been swooped along a little bit with that as well. When James McCarthy came on, you've got to trust the manager. The manager obviously knows the players. He knows who's fit or not. And he obviously felt that night McCarthy wasn't going to be fully fit. However, the tactics and the amount of players, the attack players we put out that night just played to Crystal Palace's hands. And it just blew the season for us, unfortunately. If you looked at us on the Sunday against Manchester United, okay, admittedly United were a shadow of the former selves and clearly struggled under David Moyes, but we put in an absolutely fantastic professional performance and we should have come away winning that game by 4 or 5 goals. So we definitely had the quality to get into that Champions League. I just felt ultimately the squad depth cost us. We've got a very, very good, I would say 12, 13 players that would grace the Champions League and do really well in the Champions League, but when we get 1 or 2 injuries, such as Morales getting injured at the end of the Manchester United game, Sylvain Distin going out injured as well, meaning we're having to replace him with Alcaraz for the game at Southampton, ultimately we become a little bit exposed when we have to play sides of a better quality in the Premier League. But we were in the driving seat, and unfortunately, I think we've got ourselves to blame, unfortunately, and not actually getting over that line.
James?
Yeah, I think obviously we're playing at a standard at the end of the season, even with all of the injuries, that shows that we're clearly. That match against Arsenal, we destroyed Arsenal that day. We destroyed United. We played City, who won the title, really close. The problem is, by the time we got into the driver's seat of the Champions League, it was already a very difficult task for us to accomplish. And Arsenal started the season, obviously apart from their horrible defeat to Aston Villa, started the season in excellent form. So they had built up all of those points, and their run-in was so much easier than ours. When we, if we're going to have to get those injuries and we're not going to have good performances against some of the lesser sides, then it's terrible to have to rely on, the likes of Hull or whoever Arsenal's playing at home to do us a favor. And that was the biggest problem at the end. I think at the end of the season, I'm fully convinced that we're a better team than Arsenal, and we're, we may have even been a better team than Chelsea, but the season's so long and we dropped too many points at the beginning, and I think that's really what made it hard for us.
Ped, did you think we had a chance whenever we were
of course.
up on our...
But, just going back to what James and Paddy said there, both made really good points, especially, James there talking about the run-ins. I mean, from the Arsenal game onwards, if you looked at the two teams' run-ins, they were massively different. Arsenal also got the likes of Aaron Ramsey back, which was a major boost for them. Right. They had lesser teams where Everton had to play stronger teams. And if you actually look at it on paper, Arsenal finished 7 points clear of Everton, which basically would have meant that Everton would have had to have won the last 12 games in a row to have achieved Champions League. And that is just, that would have been one of the best runs ever seen in the Premier League. I think it would have been maybe the third or the fourth best run any team had ever gone in. And when you look at the players that we desperately needed to keep fit, the likes of James McCarthy, they don't have a replacement who is anywhere near as good as them or can do the job they can do. And obviously the Crystal Palace game was the pivotal game. It really was. And the mindscape, I think, for everyone on that game was the Manchester United game on the Sunday. I think the crowd felt that way. The manager probably felt that way, thinking he could rest the likes of McCarthy for that game. We put out an ultra-attacking team, as Paddy said, thinking that we were going to just steamroll Crystal Palace. Now, this is the difference with the Premier League and every other league in the world. Crystal Palace came to Everton, still threatened with relegation, put out a very solid team with really good tactics, and we just couldn't physically compete with them, and couldn't really do anything about their style of play that night, and that cost us in the long run. We go down to Southampton as well, and they were physically stronger than us, and fitness wise, you could see that we were sapped on that day. And again, that was the difference, and sometimes that's all it was. But as James said, we dropped points early on the season against the likes of Sunderland at home, West Brom home and away, Crystal Palace obviously home and away. They were the games that really cost us. Norwich away early on in the season, first game. They were the games that really cost us. And hopefully next season, that's where we'll find a balance. Because we could have actually got beaten by Chelsea, Manchester United, Manchester City, and still got into the Champions League. You just need to have a little bit more of an even season. And I think that's where Arsenal had it. They had a really good start, and they had a really good finish. And they were so-so in the middle. But that's sometimes enough for the Champions League, even though we had a record tally in the end of it that should have got us the Champions League. But I think if you look at it on paper, 12 wins from the last 12 games, when you think about that now, you think, well, you know what, we did really well to finish where we did.
Yeah, the 7 wins in a row was massive for getting us that separation from the Spurs and the Man Uniteds and the even Southamptons, pushing us up into the talk. Even though nobody out there, Sky Sports or anybody, wanted to include Everton in the conversation for Europe, let alone Champions League. Let's go through a couple of the season type things. So, buy of the season for you, James.
What of the season?
Purchase.
Oh, purchase of the season. It's got to be Gareth Barry. Actually, it's Gareth Barry and James McCarthy.
That's a loan. There's a difference.
We spent money on him. Anyway, in terms of purchase, I'd say James McCarthy. I'm in love with him.
Yeah.
His work rate's unbelievable. He's the engine of our team. It's the great thing about him is you can tell that Martinez has that role in his team, and he has picked out James McCarthy as a player that he knows can fulfill that role. And we were wondering, why he's buying players off a relegated side, and then we watched James McCarthy play for a couple weeks, and we're like, oh, it's because he links together the passing play unbelievably. And I think the best thing that he does for us is when we're holding, when we've got possession in the attacking third, and the other team tries to make a breakout, it's those like tackles that he makes when he wins us back possession and continues the pressure. I think it's unbelievable, and obviously he has an unbelievable motor in him, and his endurance is remarkable, and he's still young.
Paddy?
I can't argue with James on that one. James McCarthy has been an absolutely outstanding signing. When you think that we sold Marouane Fellaini for £27.5 million, we brought James McCarthy in for roughly about £13 million. He's changed our whole dynamic of our style of play. He's just an absolute class act. I've not seen a midfielder play for Everton Football Club as good as him since Paul Bracewell. And the fact he's only 24 years old, and he seems a really settled type of guy who I think will stick with Everton as well for the next 4 or 5 years. He's also got that combative side about him as well. So, he's like a modern day Roy Keane to me, as well as like sort of Paul Bracewell, someone who can mix it. He can pass the ball, he runs in the right spaces, but he can do a disciplined job as well. And if you think in one of the games, I think it might have been the Aston Villa game back in February, he played it right back for about 20, 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, right.
And changed the game from there. So he's got such class for the money we spent for him. I can't say much more other than the fact absolutely fantastic signing and well worth the investment that we've spent on him.
Ped?
I can't really think of anyone else we actually did buy.
Alcaraz, Kone, McGeady.
They were free. They were free.
Yeah. They were free or special handshake deals. Definitely got to be James McCarthy again. what Paddy and James have just said there. He's just phenomenal, isn't he? He's just phenomenal, and it's game. You always know how good a player is when he doesn't play. And the Crystal Palace game was the clear game. And when he came on against Crystal Palace, he changed the game. Everyone suddenly felt that they knew what their job was, whereas before I don't think players knew what their job was that night because he wasn't there. And someone last-ditch tackles and things like that. Again, Manchester United at home, 2-0 up, last minute, Rooney gets a chance, and who's there throwing his body in the way just to put him off that 2% that allows Tim Howard to make a save, and that's what he's been like all season. And what I actually liked is his goal against Hull last game of the season. I think we're going to see a lot more of that side of his game next season. I think we're going to see him bursting through. He's got the energy levels that allow him to do that, get past the forward, and I think he can start adding that to his game.
For that to happen, though, we either need a healthy Gibson or we need to get Barry on permanent.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if Everton are bombing forward and are controlling the ball outside the area, he can make them runs because he'll probably know that next season the team will be a lot more well-rounded and other players will know where to fit in. And I won't mention this now, but I think next season we're going to see the emergence of a player that will allow that. The emergence of two players that are going to allow that. But he would definitely be the buy of the season. And going back to what Paddy just said about Roy Keane, for me he is a Roy Keane. I would never ever want to compare him to someone else who plays not far from here. But Roy Keane is definitely the player. And it's interesting now that we're starting to hear transfer rumours, because other people have sort of caught on how good he is, and he's been linked with Manchester United. And Roy Keane's actually come out this weekend on Irish radio and said, why would he vote to Manchester United? It's a step down from Everton, which I can only applaud Roy Keane for, because he's one of my heroes, non-Everton heroes.
I have to apologize for this question because it was kind of a trick question, because he was about the only person that we bought that didn't get injured for a significant amount of time. So he was pretty much the only one that played. So congratulations, you all answered the question correctly, because there was only one possible answer.
Well, Paddy, Eric, just come to me straight away now, because I know you're going to do play the season next. So I'm just going to.
I was going to do Loney. I was going to do Loney of the season. So Pat,
well, let me
Loney.
Player of the season.
No, you're not in charge of this. This is not Toffee TV. You be quiet.
Listen, though, he's my player of the year, so I don't need to say anything more about him. He's my player of the year.
Well,
so
great. So we'll skip you whenever we get to player of the year. So Ped, what's Loney of the year?
Loney of the year.
Ped.
Loney of the year. Barry, I suppose. But, it's very hard to separate Barry and Lukaku, simply because you look at how many goals Lukaku scored and you think, where would we be without those goals?
Yeah.
But then you have to sort of balance that with the job Barry did for the whole team, in essence of...
I mean, his save in the Chelsea match, first off, was his...
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
it's little things like that.
And then he had the goal where he put his left foot just straight through it from outside the box.
Yeah.
I forget who that was against.
Norwich,
but Norwich.
Yes, and so I really can't separate them, because it's really hard to say what we would have done without one or the other, because there was a period of time in the first half of the season when Lukaku was scoring goals in games that we may not have won otherwise. He almost papered over the cracks of allowing the team to grow. He was like the get out of jail card, Lukaku, in the early part of the season. He was scoring those goals that was getting us the points, that was taking the pressure off everyone else who was learning the style of play, and that took a lot of pressure off Roberto Martinez, because if you think what would have happened if we hadn't have won those games and we were around mid-table and we were you don't want to be learning a new style while being sort of sucked into a dogfight. You want happy times to go, to be part of it, so it's hard in that sense. So I will put them dead even.
Paddy, do you want to get off the fence and pick one?
Oh, last season, Traore. About to shout out. Look at his goal return ratio.
Yeah, his goal to minute. I really feel bad that he got into the last match, because it ruined his record of scoring in every appearance.
Yeah, he didn't touch the ball once at Hull, by the way. But
but he was still on the.
Really counts.
Okay.
No, you can't go beyond.
How many times did he touch it in the? How many times did he touch it in the other match?
Well, against Swansea, I think he hit the ball went off the back of his backside and the back of the net, and that was it, wasn't it? No, I think Gareth Barry's got to be loan signing of the season. When a lot of Evertonians, I remember going to the Norwich game on a very long trip to Norwich, and he was linked in the papers then, and everyone was turning their nose up saying, Gareth Barry, why would you want Gareth Barry when you've got Darren Gibson? But that sort of challenge he's done against Chelsea sort of cemented everything for me. He came in with his sort of leadership skills as well. He's done an absolutely fantastic job for us. I genuinely hope we can get him in for next season as well and sign him on a permanent basis, because I think he's got so much to offer the team. So I can't look beyond him. The amount of games he played, the level of consistency, and the fact that he helped bed everything down, I think. And he's probably one of the main players that I think helped the likes of James McCarthy settle in so quickly and helped sort of enforce the style of play that Roberto Martinez was trying to bring into the team. He's such an escape valve for the centre halves as well, who want to try and play and pass the ball out. When you think how uncomfortable Sylvain Diston was in the first few games of the season trying to pass the ball out, having someone like Gareth Barry there as a sort of a security blanket added so much to our game as well. So Gareth Barry for me, one of the best loan signings Everton have made since we brought Duncan Ferguson in 1994.
For me, I'm going to throw out Lukaku. I think Lukaku was someone that was not as easily to replace if we didn't have him in the squad. I think Barry, we would have been able to figure it out and maybe hide or shuffle around. But I think without Lukaku, we would have definitely been a lot weaker squad. So that for me, that's why I would have to go with Romelu Lukaku for Loanee of the Year. And what about you, James?
I have to go with Paddy and say Gareth Barry.
You would.
Of course I would. Well, and you look at when he came in, and I had a sense that Gareth Barry was going to be a good loan signing. I know that everyone was kind of talking him down, but I didn't realize how intelligent of a player he was until I watched him move for the first few games, because the way he moved without the ball, anticipating not only where he needed to be for our players to create the safety valve that Paddy was talking about, but also how he needed to move defensively, and just watching him be, an intelligent player on the field. He obviously doesn't have the pace, but we made up for his lack of pace with James McCarthy. And I think that Gareth Barry would kind of be crazy to not stay at Everton after this season that he's had, because somebody like James McCarthy can extend his career for a couple of years and keep him from having to, do all of the work himself in the midfield, which he obviously couldn't do for City, and that's why they wanted to move him on.
All right, so Ped, who's your player of the year?
James McCarthy.
All right.
Again.
Paddy?
For reasons before.
Paddy?
I'll mix this up a little bit. He's probably going to be in the young player of the year category, but I'm going to go for John Stones. Only because James McCarthy's the obvious choice, and I want to sort of mix it up a little bit. I just think the fact that John Stones, when he came to Everton, had only played something like 10 games at championship level. Actually started 10 games, predominantly playing at right back. He came into a Premiership team in the midst of sort of Christmas, the festive period. He had to make his first start against Stoke. Not a very easy away game to go into, and the guy has just grown in stature since January time. The fact that the England centre-half, our captain, was absent for 3 months and we did not miss him once says so much about how good John Stones has been. And that guy, I hope he has a long career at Everton. Something tells me that the guy's going to have a long, successful career. It might not necessarily be at Everton Football Club, but that guy can play anywhere. I've just been absolutely impressed with him. I really do hope he goes to the World Cup as well. But the fact that he came in January time and made such a sort of step up from an absolute ground zero point of view, he's done absolutely fantastic. So James McCarthy's been fantastic, probably warrants it, but I think John Stones is really pushing him in regards to being Player of the Year.
James, what do you say?
Osman.
Yeah. Interesting.
Well, I mean, Ozzy was not injured all season. I mean, no, I don't actually think Osman. I mean, I think first half of the season, Seamus Coleman was absolutely unbelievable, getting forward, bringing goals into his game for the first time, and solidifying his position as a right back. Obviously, we don't have a lot of cover at that position, but I think second half of the season, John Stones, probably person of the whole season, James McCarthy. So I feel like it's a really hard choice because we did have players that played so well throughout the season.
Yeah, and yes, absolutely. So Paddy mentioned he wanted to have a separate category for Young Player of the Year. I didn't have that written down, but we'll go through that real quick. Paddy, who was your Young Player of the Year if you had John Stones as your Player of the Year?
Oh, well, I've put myself in a bit of a cul-de-sac here, haven't I? It's going to have to be Ross Barkley, isn't it? I think, if John Stone's going to get me Player of the Year, I'll have to give it to Ross Barkley. I think he scored 6 goals this season, and every single one of them's been a goal of the season contender. Absolutely fantastic sort of season he's had. His season was stunted a little bit by the injury against QPR in the Cup in January time, but he ended the season really strongly. I think that'll be to England's benefit in the World Cup in Brazil. I do think he will get some game time over there. To think that he couldn't get in the Leeds team sort of 18 months ago. Neil Warnock wouldn't give him a game because the guy can't take responsibility because, you know what, he was only 19 years old at the time, and why would you want to give it a 19-year-old who's got one of the best creative brains in football that responsibility? But that was Neil Warnock's decision. But Roberto Martinez has grabbed hold of him, and he's making him a world-class player. So for me, Ross Barkley, and some fantastic, wonderful goals. The one against City, it's just a shame that we lost that game because that's one of the best goals I've seen in a long time from any Everton player. So yeah, Ross Barkley for me.
The way Ross Barkley was running past, I don't know, Ped mentioned this on the show, the way he was running past a Spanish international in that City game after that goal, it was just unbelievable.
It was just effortless. It was absolutely effortless. He didn't even have to think about it. It just came naturally to him. It was absolutely amazing. And yeah, it was just unfortunate in the circumstances of that game and what it meant in terms of the sort of wider context of the league that goal had to come in that game. But it cemented his place in the England squad. It was fantastic that Roy Hodgson was sat there to see it for himself.
Pen, Young Player?
Well, just touching on Barkley for a moment. He's not my Young Player of the Year, but I just wanted to touch on him for just for a moment. He's been stunning this season, and he has in and outs. Obviously, like every young player, he tries to be too clever and take the fancy route out of it instead of a 5-yard pass. But I think that's why Roberto Martinez loves him, and the way he almost has built a bubble around him in the team. He's literally built this space around him so he can do what he wants, and if it doesn't happen, there's always players around him to help him. His goals have been phenomenal. The way James just touched on the way he runs past people. The Newcastle goal for me was just amazing because he run from his right foot to his left foot and never broke stride. And people are always clamouring in this country about seeing 2-footed players. Yet when he did that, people started saying in this country, well, no one put a tackle in. Well, that's because no one could catch him. And that's because he put Colaccini off balance because he went from his right foot to his left foot with no signs of any unbalanced at all. And some players in this country can't even kick with their other foot and have reached the highest heights.
Stuart Downing.
Well, I wasn't even thinking of Stuart Downing. I was thinking of people like Ashley Cole who can't who can't use 2 feet. So he's an amazing player. And I was actually told something yesterday that David Moyes if David Moyes had got a good offer for him, he would have actually sold him. So that tells you everything about that. But my Young Player of the Year is actually John Stones because I just think that from where he came from, as Paddy said, where he came from on New Year's Day to where he finished the season on, well, for me, and I've actually said this all season, on one form of radio or on this podcast, is that he would be in the England team if he had played all season. Now he's on the edges of it, and I think he deserves to be in the England team simply because of when Everton played Manchester United, you've seen Smalling and Jones and Stones playing, and Stones was head and shoulders better than they were on every level, defending, creativity, and we've seen towards the end of the season as well. Manchester City, he played right back, played centre back, he was going down the wing, putting crosses in. he's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal footballer. It's scary what levels this lad will end up at. I hope and pray they're at Everton, but he is such a talented footballer, and the fact that Roberto Martinez identified that and gave him that responsibility, and there was no issue with it. And as Paddy said again, to miss Jagielka and not miss him, and him to be part of that long run of wins, you can't say anything more about him. And he hardly put a foot wrong. Okay, he made a couple of mistakes now and again defensively, but he was just phenomenal. I think he's a phenomenal footballer and will go on to the highest heights. I think he'll be England captain without a shadow of a doubt. I think he could be England captain by the next time the World Cup rolls along. So hopefully it'll be in an Everton shirt. I pray that this team is built round these players, and if we build around that, we will have a team that will compete at the highest level.
It is really amazing how many options for Young Player of the Year there are in the Everton squad. Something that we talked about previous years about how the squad was very old or very young, and finally we've gotten some players in the mix to be able to bridge that gap and got rid of some of the older players like the Aitinga's got players like Tony Hibbert out of the 18 and doesn't even get a sniff into the squad, especially after quite a few injuries. Whenever he's back healthy, he still doesn't make it onto the pitch, and just kind of being able to swap out the old guard for some younger kids and giving them chances and letting them play. Barkley's got to be my actual player of the year. I think that he's been most important to the squad, and then Stones is my young player of the year. Goal of the season, James?
Seamus Coleman versus Swansea.
Okay.
Who had any idea that he could do that? And then he just slices across the ball and cuts it into the net, and I loved it when he ran over, because Ross Barkley had another good goal in that game. But I loved it when he ran over and he was so excited that he was kicking the ad boards in front of the Everton fans. I watch it over and over again. I love that goal. It came out of nowhere as well.
Paddy?
I'm going to go for the controversial one here, but you've got to understand the context for the season. Seamus Coleman versus Cardiff and his shin. Mainly because if we hadn't won that game, we would not have finished the season as strong as we had done. The season would have just evaporated. So we needed to get 3 points after getting knocked out the FA Cup. So I think Seamus Coleman's shin in the sort of minutes of injury time, in terms of the context of everything, was so important to us. So I'm going to go for that one.
Would that be more or less controversial than the West Brown own goal?
Possibly.
You remember the media after somebody in the media after that goal from Seamus Coleman was complaining about the fact that he actually celebrated it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It was ridiculous.
Ped, for you, goal of the year?
It's a difficult one, that. So many good goals, so many. I think Ross Barkley basically owns this category. I think.
Yeah.
I think the first goal he scored of the season against Norwich was so important to it was such a great goal, but also for him to sort of say, I am here, and this is who I am, and I'm part of the new generation for Martinez. I loved the goal last game of the season. I thought it typified everything that Everton had become. The Lukaku's goal, it said everything, but I think in context of what that game meant, it was a great goal, but where the Hull were trying, I'm not so sure. Again, his goal against Manchester City was fantastic. But actually, I think my goal of the season would be Leighton Baines' second free kick against West Ham.
Yeah.
Because he just scored one free kick, and then he goes and does it in the opposite corner. And, you think about that week, just come after the week after the transfer, deadline day, and him staying, and, it's a couple of games afterwards, and there's so much context for that goal, but such a phenomenal free kick, and you'll hear a lot of stories about Kevin Sheedy when he had a free kick disallowed when he put it in one corner, so he just put it in the other corner. And to see 2 free kicks within the space of 2 20 minutes or so, one going one corner, one going the other. How many free kick takers do you watch? And actually, their strike ratio isn't that good. They score great free kicks, but it might be 1 in 5. He got 2 and 2 in opposite corners in the same game, and for me, that was just phenomenal.
Yeah, that was good. Scored quite a few goals off of free kicks. Morales and then Barkley just saying, "Well, Baines does it. I guess I'll do it. Why not?" Bain definitely Barkley owns this category. The Newcastle goal, the full length run of that one, amazing. For me, it's any home goal that went into the park end, because then that meant the Folotonians flag was on TV quite a bit. So, any other categories here that we want to cover for?
No, I wanted to just throw in most improved player of the season. Because
definitely. I've got that here.
For me, I mean, there's 2 players obviously that would stand out massively in this category. For me, it's Oviedo and Naismith would massively come into this category. Naismith was just phenomenal in the second half of the season. How he changed himself round and become a crowd favourite, and he actually turned into actually a decent player, and probably the best finisher at the club maybe as well. He had fantastic eye for goal, could do a job as well. He turned into a quite intelligent player. Roberto Martinez asked him to do that job against Arsenal, where he would basically make sure Arteta didn't get much of the ball, and he played it. That false number 9, and for previously he'd been a false number 9 because he just wasn't a very good one, but then suddenly he became one by actually being able to play in the role. So I thought he was fantastic. Oviedo was fantastic as well, but I think Naismith just shaded him.
Yeah, for me, it's hard to realize this, but it's Barkley's first real season getting any match time for Everton, so to not include him in this category as well, it would be hard to do. Naismith for me was very good, but I think Barkley's got to be the most improved. James?
I think it's got to be Oviedo. I was never really in the we hate Stephen Naismith bandwagon anyway. I always liked Naismith, and I always thought that there was obviously something wrong with his game. He had the 2 bad knee injuries, and it looked like he was always playing more defense than he was being told to go forward, and I think that probably went against his instincts. So I was not shocked at all.
Probably has to go towards a previous manager's way of playing.
Precisely, yeah, in ruining strikers. But I always had faith in Naismith, so I was just happy to see him improve. The thing about who knew who Brian Oviedo was before he came in and made us forget about Leighton Baines for a couple of months while he was injured.
Yeah, big Mies he did. That was about it.
I bet he did. Yeah. Well, he was this young kid that Moyes bought again, but never played, and then he turns into what seems to be a cult hero at this point, and also apparently heals faster than 10 humans.
Wolverine.
Yeah, exactly.
Paddy?
I think for me it's got to be Stephen Naismith. I was the total opposite to James. I totally wrote him off. And
he was driving the bandwagon.
You were driving the bandwagon.
I was. I'm shouting out loud at the same time. No, I just thought he was.
Get off!
I just thought he was too slow for the Premier League, and I thought the injuries were too much for him. I couldn't see where he'd fit, but I've got to give the guy so much credit. He's worked so hard. I think he's been helped by a manager though that's played him in the right position as well, and has given him his self-belief back. So I think for me, it's got to be Stephen Naismith. Oviedo, it's a good shout. If you'd have saw him against Stevenage in the League Cup tie, you would have really been questioning if this guy could ever cut it in English football. But no, the sort of transformation when he sort of came into the team when Leighton Baines was injured around November time, and when he had a run of games, yeah, you could see a very much improved player. But to be fair, he hadn't been given a chance in the first place. So no, definitely for me, Stephen Naismith. The way he's now he's one of the first picks in the Everton squad, whereas 12 months ago he'd been one of the first picks out the club.
I feel like Oviedo. You guys remember, and I guess it was it 08-09 when Leighton Baines came in from Wigan, and we were still running Jolien Lescott at left back for the most part, and all of a sudden, we put Leighton Baines in, and we didn't know whether he was going to be good or not. I feel like it's a lot like what happened with Oviedo, and a guy just taking his opportunity and then growing into the position, which is lovely. It's always lovely to see.
Oh, there was a lot of people out there that wrote Baines off after about 5 games.
Exactly.
I remember so many people out there sort of slagging the guy off. But
a lot of times he was being played like out on the wing as well.
He was, and I think with Baines, as we've seen over the last couple of years, he's a confidence player. He needs to grow into the role, so he wouldn't even take a free kick. Say 3-4 years ago, he was overawed by the likes of, say, Arteta, and would always step back and let the more senior guys take the lead. But he's grown in stature. I think Oviedo just didn't get an opportunity to play, and once he's been given the opportunity, he's absolutely flourished. And I think, like everyone, we all hope he gets over that leg break, and we see him in August time, ready to go, because the guy looked really impressive, sort of January time before that tragic injury.
Well, he's not tragic. He didn't die.
It was tragic for his World Cup chances.
It was the saddest picture that we had all season of like Morales standing over his like best friend and like holding his hand as he goes off the field. It was just like horrifying.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
I did warn you, Pep, before that game something like that had happened as well.
I actually said that game on Twitter. I was raving on Twitter saying, because I just remember the pitch was awful as it was. You'd said to me it was awful. It was pouring down rain, but it was the fact that the clown who runs that team, and Graham Wesley, his name is, he's an absolute clown. He's always on radio in this country with wacky ideas how to improve football. But I just remember he was walking all over the pitch, and they had all kinds of things going on the pitch with kids and all kinds of it was just ridiculous. And I just thought to myself, something bad is going to happen here today. So I didn't know what it was, but you're not supposed to have people walking over your pitch before a game, especially in those conditions. And this idiot was almost like he was leading the circus all over his pitch. I'm surprised he didn't have an elephant on it. The absolute idiot. So, but yeah, I think personally on Oviedo, and I'll touch on this in a moment when we just look forward to next season. I think he's going to become a massive part of this team, because I actually think when he played left back, Everton were a better side. He actually fits more into the type of fullback that Roberto Martinez wants, more than Leighton Baines. So, but I'll talk about that in a moment.
Okay, well, let's get into next year.
Oh my God, Leighton Baines is Philip Lahm.
What do we see for Everton next year? I know it's going to change up the podcast schedule possibly with Thursday night matches, and just means it's going to be instant reaction from the Followtonians next year.
I'm just thinking about my riding schedule. Like, oh my God.
Hopefully we'll make it worth your while, James.
Yeah.
Is that a Chang?
No, yeah. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Are they sponsoring us?
No.
Then it's not.
Oh.
No, we'll get to the sponsor later.
Should we talk about? I feel like we need to talk about. Everybody's spoken about the holes that we see in the team. We've got a bunch of more matches coming up now that we're into the group stages of the Europa League. Where do we need to fill holes in the team?
We need a striker. We need a holding midfielder.
And who?
We need a backup keeper, because Robles is garbage and nobody trusts Howard.
We need a number one keeper.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the summer. I think we need about 6 to 8 new players. Obviously, it doesn't look like Delafeu is coming back now. Barry.
No.
Massively 50-50. Honestly, I think a lot of Blues are really positive and think it was a done deal. It's not a done deal. That is very much still up in the air.
Apparently, one really wants to go to MLS. Actually.
Yeah, I mean, but that you're talking. If he wants to go to New York, you're talking. He's not going to be able to play till next March. So maybe we'll figure out a way. Give him a year deal. He'll take a couple of months off and then get into MLS halfway through. That might be the best thing. Lukaku, who knows? Chelsea are looking at giving him a new contract. Maybe we can get him for another year on loan. Apparently, the valuation of Boney is now £21 million.
You gotta expect that too, yeah.
That is that looks way off. As Paddy just mentioned there, I would like to see another goalkeeper challenging Tim Howard. I'm not I haven't been overly impressed by him this season. I think he costs us a lot of goals. I don't think people think it's been his best season for a while, but for me, I think he needs to work a hell of a lot more on dominating his area, because that is a big part of what Roberto Martinez wants. He wants a goalkeeper who's like a sweeper keeper and who's good with his feet. So I think that's a big thing that needs to be looked at.
It's like 11th attacker.
Well, yeah, that's what modern keepers have got to do now. You watch other goalkeepers in the league, and that's what they're starting to do.
Does he take his jersey and turn it inside out and backwards? And
that's what keepers have got to do now. I mentioned Leighton Baines there, then and Oviedo. I think Leighton Baines, we might start seeing him play more as a centre midfielder. I know it's been muted before, but I think we'll see the team maybe play a lot more three at the back as well and play wing backs. And I think Oviedo suits playing wing back more than Leighton Baines does.
Yeah,
with Coleman on the other side. And I think if we play three at the back.
Put Baines in the middle.
We'd be better playing centre midfield. That's where they've identified this role for him, and I think that could work as well. And Ryan Ledson is another one as well, a young player who obviously Everton fans have just seen captain England under-17s to the European Championship. He's another player who could come on the edges of the squad and maybe provide that cover for James McCarthy. But I also believe that there's talk that he might be sent out on loan for a year as well. So
maybe to Leeds, that'd be good.
Don't worry, he's not there anymore.
Yeah, I definitely believe we need another at least 6 to 8 players for next season. You've mentioned there the Europa League. It's going to be a big challenge.
Yep.
But as Roberto Martinez said, in the interview, he wants a squad for the Europa League, and he wants to leave players behind to be prepped for the next game in the league. So
like
he
a squad and a half
or
so. Yeah.
Yeah. So he wants a lot more players, and he wants them, coming in as soon as possible. I know that he wants a couple of deals done before the World Cup, so hopefully we can get them done, and hopefully, Gibson coming back, Aruna Kone, Brian Oviedo,
Pinar,
Pinar, and a lot more of the younger players just sort of becoming more rounded and better, and hopefully that's what happens.
A lot of Everton players in their international squads for the World Cup. And Howard, Morales. I guess you can kind of count Lukaku, sort of, not really. Yeah, but one person that has made a lot of news over here, and a lot of Everton fans are confused about why he's not going to Brazil is Landon Donovan, and we just want to
love you, Landon.
And we do.
We should preface this by saying that Eric is very depressed about this decision. He's wearing a Landon Donovan jersey.
I'm wearing a Nike U.S. national team train top, but I'm actually not, and I want to kind of put this out there for a lot of Everton fans, because I saw it on Twitter a major reaction as far as why is Landon not going to Brazil, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that he didn't sign for Everton a couple of years ago whenever he could have. I really do believe this. Last season, at the end of the MLS season, he was in really good form. That's why they brought him in for the Gold Cup. But he started out this year slightly carrying a little bit more weight. He's not playing nearly as well. He's not as fast as he used to be. Huh? Yeah, animal style, right? Yeah, animal style. But he's lost at least a half a step. He hasn't scored yet this year in the MLS. He's not creating nearly as many opportunities for the LA Galaxy. So Klinsmann places a really high value on form with club, and there's the Josie Altidore argument and whatever, but the thing about Landon is there's more players that are stepping up and catching up to his quality in his position that is a great asset for the U.S., and the fact that he is not in form has just given Klinsmann the opportunity to leave him out. So if the side's better without him, then I'm fine with it.
Thank you for that, Eric. I know you needed to get that off your chest.
Yeah, I did.
Open up to somebody.
I did.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see how Morales does and how Howard does, and
I'm so happy that there's football this summer because I guess last summer was the Confederations Cup. I'm just thrilled to see that we're going to get an excellent tournament. And Ped said this beforehand about I'm really upset about the Landon Donovan thing actually, and I'm not a huge Landon Donovan fan, so it was just going to be like his fourth World Cup, and I think he brings some intangible aspects of his game to a team. Obviously, there's got to be some sort of personality dispute between him and Jurgen Klinsmann. Whether that has to do with Landon Donovan being too influential in the team and maybe taking something away from what Klinsmann does, he's trying to shake things up. And Ped said this beforehand, and I thought he made a really good point when we were talking earlier that by picking so many young kids, and we're in such a hard group, the U.S. men's national team, I should say, we're developing for the future, and I think that that is definitely a concern of Klinsmann, and maybe a mid-30s Landon Donovan doesn't help him out down the road.
You're just annoyed because he made big foreheads look pretty.
I'm not annoyed by that. Look how big my forehead is.
That's what I'm saying. He was at the World Cup repping the big foreheads.
He's a forehead model.
everybody on here except for you, Ped, has a big forehead. What's your problem?
Yeah, seriously.
Shut up.
Well, I mean, I just want to round up the World Cup talk, just by obviously focusing on, are there any expectations on Ross Barkley? If he has a really good World Cup, is that to be celebrated or is that to worry about?
I don't think he's going anywhere.
I don't think he's going anywhere either. Yeah.
I hope he has a good World Cup because I really want the hype I really want there to develop some hype for both Ross Barkley and Everton going into next season.
If David Luiz is worth $50 million, then Ross Barkley.
Let me ask that question to Paddy though, because I think he'll have a completely different perspective on it.
From my perspective, I'm concerned about growing Everton's presence in the United States. So the more that we see Ross Barkley with the ESPN coverage in the World Cup, and the more now that all of the games are on TV here, I think then that Everton will develop more of a fan base, which I think is a positive for us.
And you get Roberto as well on TV.
Yep.
Oh God, yeah.
It's going to be amazing. Who doesn't love to talk to Roberto?
Right, Ped. Well, I know the answer that Ped's expecting here. The last two Everton superstars that I've got into World Cups or major tournaments have been Gary Lineker, who, after scoring 6 goals in World Cup '86, moved to Barcelona, and Wayne Rooney in 2004, who took the tournament by storm, moved to Manchester United shortly afterwards, despite having a broken ankle, for a record transfer fee. So there's a bit of nervousness on my behalf if Ross Barkley rips up everything and takes the tournament by storm. I think though we're in a slightly different ballpark this time. '86 Everton were banned from Europe and couldn't offer Gary Lineker European football. In 2004, allegedly, Everton were moments from going away from bankruptcy, so we had to sell Wayne Rooney. Yeah. I think this time the position is very different. We've got a progressive young manager who wants to take the club forward. We've got European football, and we've got a platform for Ross Barkley. And I think, regardless of how well he plays in the World Cup, I think he'll be with Everton Football Club next season. That we give him a platform to continue to develop, but he'll obviously go on a lot of people's radar if he performs as well as we all think he can do.
Well, let me just ask one more question regarding the World Cup. Of all the players who've played for Everton this season, who are at the World Cup, who do you think is going to be the number one standout player who people are going to look at and go, "Wow, he had a brilliant World Cup"? Eric, let's start with you.
Oh wow! For some reason, and I'm not sure why, I think it's going to be Kevin Morales.
Yeah.
I think that he's got the most support around him in the Belgian squad, to where the group that they're in and the talent around him, I think he's got the ability to do something very special and really put his name out there.
James?
I gotta say Morales too. I for some reason I get this weird feeling that Kevin Morales is going to absolutely take Europe by storm for us next season.
I think Morales. Well, yeah, I think Morales might turn into the Gary Lineker kind of a thing.
Hey, may happen. Well, I mean, he was being looked at. We all know that he was being looked at by teams like Arsenal beforehand. Maybe his consistency was the thing that kept them from upping their interest in him. But I think he's developing under Martinez as well.
I could see him going to Spain somewhere, for Champions League.
I think if he goes, is a big if at the moment, John Stones. I think if John Stones goes and I think Phil Jones, if you're Roy Hodgson, you're looking at Phil Jones and John Stones, you've got an opportunity there with one of the two. I think if John Stones goes, I think he will get a game. And
if he doesn't?
Once he gets a game, as he's proven by Everton, he will he'll take that World Cup by storm. Centre halves of his quality do not come often. So I think that'll be a very interesting one. If he doesn't go, I don't think it'll be Morales because he doesn't tend to be a starter for Belgium either. I think it would be possibly Ross Barkley if he can take the tournament by storm. I'm struggling to think who else is out there really other than
Howard.
Class Lukaku potentially as an Everton player. Probably not.
I think
Yelovich.
It's not necessarily about taking the tournament by storm. Children. It's not about taking this. It's about who would be the best, and I actually think the player who will come out to this tournament with the biggest applause from people on the outside is Phil Jagielka. I think a lot of people are going to turn round from this tournament and go, "Oh, isn't that centre half the one who John Terry was supposed to be in there?" Because I don't think anyone gives Phil Jagielka the respect he deserves. Certainly in this country, people when you ask these former ex-England geniuses who don't have any other job but to go on TV and talk about it.
David James.
What the biggest problem is with England, they always say the centre-backs, and I think Phil Jagielka is going to play at such a level that people are going to turn around and go, oh, I didn't realise he was that good. And I think obviously because England will have to do a lot of defending as well, he will end up being the number one player. And I could even see him being, the old Terry Butcher type player with the bleeding for the cause, that kind of thing, and I think he's going to have a great World Cup.
I worry Paddy's going to be more like Matthew Upson, to be honest with you. Just with the climate and the temperature and the fact that I think there's still, some question marks around his overall fitness. I do worry a little bit about Jagielka, but I hope I'm proven wrong, and I hope you're right.
All right, rapid fire, yes or no answer. Were you wanting us to lose to City, James?
Absolutely not. I hate City.
Paddy?
No, I wanted Everton to win. I always want Everton Football Club to win.
Pad?
Yes, of course, I wanted Everton to lose. Paddy was sitting next to me and was giving me bad daggers all the way through the game. He knows how much I was wanting Man City to win that game.
All right, and I think that's about all we need to cover as far as the show goes. Ped, do you want to make any announcements, or do we save those for later? Or?
No, we'll do that now because we've got Paddy on. But for next season, we will have a new sponsor, and Paddy just happens to work for that company. I mean, what are the odds of that? A sponsor coming along and Paddy working for that? And I just want
Paddy, I want
Paddy now. I want Paddy to introduce the new sponsor of the Follow-Tonians podcast and to tell us all about them.
Please.
Okay. Cheers, Pad. Cheers, Eric. Well, Apsis Services Limited are going to be proud sponsors for the 2014-15 season of the Follow-Tonians. So we're a relatively new organisation. We started last year. Very much specialising in procurement solutions for businesses. So we deal with consultancy, but we also offer a whole range of sourcing solutions as well for organisations to utilise. So we do things like spend analytics, and we have a whole host of technologies as well that we utilise and work with organisations to implement as well. And we provide guidance to organisations looking to utilise their existing sourcing solutions as well. So you'll get to hear quite a lot from us, I think, over the course of the next season. We're planning quite a detailed campaign to utilise the sponsorship that we're going to be working with Follow-Tonians on. So we'll hopefully have more information as the season progresses next year. But we're really looking forward to working alongside you guys. As you know, 5th season, and hopefully 20 years about a trophy for Everton, we'll be able to mark it with a trophy and by sponsoring hopefully a special season for us.
James is just happy he's going to get some money.
I'm going to get money.
Can I just say? I haven't got any idea what Paddy just said there.
No.
But I know
He said a lot of things about solutions. I'm ready for that.
I know, but what I do know is that this company are a very young, up-and-coming company that, and if they all work as hard as Paddy works for them, then they're going to be very, very successful. So we are very happy to have them on board, and
I just want to know if they're going to get Robot Ped to actually die.
They can't. They have a solutions. They just don't have a solution for that. Nobody has a solution for that. NASA doesn't have a solution for that.
All right.
So it's but thank you for getting involved with us, and hope for a long-lasting partnership. So they say.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back probably midsummer sometime to give more details as far as summer pre-season schedules and how that's going to work out for Everton. Maybe eventually we'll be able to and show you photos of what the kit for next year is going to look like through Umbro. Probably not until maybe August. They're saying July is when that might be out. But yeah, stay tuned. We'll definitely keep you all in the loop if you stick with us. But thanks, Pad. Thanks, James, for coming on with us and all your hard work throughout this past year. Preview and review of the matches. Much appreciated.
Been our pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for everyone that's read and talked to me about the matches. It's made it worthwhile.
Thanks for talking to James, people. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, seriously, talk to me.
We'll talk to you later. See you later this summer, and bye.
You've been listening to the Folotonians podcast. If you want your accent heard, contact show@folotonians.com. For more information, visit folotonians.com, twitter.com/Folotonians, or search the Folotonians podcast on Facebook.